So if you want to experiment, if you want to get a sense of overrun, underrun, really the best time to do that would be here at the beginning before we introduce a lot of the dynamics of processing and so forth. So what you would basically do to practice that would be, to get a sense for this early in the pathway. This way you can kind of be able to recognize these kind of symptoms later on. You could do that with the early objective processes, when we're just moving things around, moving the body around and so forth, seeing the difference between ending the process early versus running it past the point of feeling good, brighter, increased awareness and so forth. There's less of a liability, treating it early on and experimenting early on, so. But as we said, we're going to get into the second process, and this immediately follows the one we were talking about with looking around and spotting spots and so forth. So we're going to practice the deliberate, knowing, conscious use of touching and letting go, or reaching and withdrawing from something. And in order, of course, to touch and let go of an object, the seeker would first have to have spot the object as present in the environment, present in the space-time. And so this isn't about difficulty and whatnot, raising a difficulty level. We're still treating, again, at PC1, the Professional Course Lesson 1, and in the Pathway to Ascension Volume 1, we're still treating, in the first lesson, the increase of awareness, just the general increase of awareness in which to apply to other processing, other areas. So the actual PCL, the process and command lines, for this second process are actually given in that formal session script that starts, that's what we give out at the end of the basic course, and that basic formula we continue to build upon. So in this case, the PCL given is choose an object, decide you're going to reach for it, then make that body pick it up. And then now decide the second PCL of that, now decide when you're going to put it down and make that body put it back where it was. And you'll notice when we do these process and command lines, some significant systemological thought has gone into the design of how we treat this in processing. So, first using the word decide on something. Now get the sense of making yourself do that, going through those actions. These are again conscious, deliberate, conscious living, conscious actions. And further, when you start to do this more on a knowing, conscious basis, you're undoing a lot of the reactive programming or conditioning or whatever you want to refer to that as. We get into more specific systemological vocabulary as we go along, but everyone generally understands what I mean when we talk about reactive automation, automaticity, the automatic reactive responses. Something happens, a person reacts, automatically or whatnot. Reach and withdraw is a good example of that. And if you want to take that a step further, we have another example. Choose an object, decide on an exact spot on the object, and reach for it. Now touch that spot for a moment and then let go of it. Again, you'll want to adapt this basic pattern. We want to, for this professional course, we're focusing on or emphasizing the solo practitioner, the solo pilot. So however it is you need to word these to have that precise, and notice we also say that body. That's another point of precision semantics that we incorporate into the processing command lines or PCL. We're not, you'll just notice when you look at the way that these are arranged. For example, we're not saying move your body, or move, or just telling you, okay, now move your hand. No, it's move that body's hand, of course. Now you are, of course, in possession, or some people believe vice versa, but you're in possession, or you have a body, and it is something that belongs to, or is owned by, or is used by you. But right from the heart, first lesson, first steps, entry-level steps on the pathway, we want to get out of the habit of associating self, I, the I am, the alpha spirit, associating that as, one-to-one as the body, that it is one and the same as the body. So we do that, we're very careful, and this is why piloting training, for those that are going to co-pilot, professionally assist other individuals, there's a lot of training that goes into that, because we want to use this systemology exactly as it's prescribed in order to not jumble a person up by using the wrong words and so forth. So that's why we have this systematic way of doing this. And that's why I say, again, the instructions themselves, certainly we're going to confront more and more areas of life that are more turbulent or difficult to necessarily confront directly as you may be now, as we go along the pathway. But the instructions, the actual what is it you need to do, these are not complicated. This is not, a matter of waiting for the right timing, some astrological timing, or looking for the right ingredients, some hard to find ingredients, and did you memorize, a certain prayer or incantation. This isn't really about that. This works on a much different level. And of course, we've talked about why, like, for example, presence in session is the key component to those other methods that we've just kind of, in passing, tongue-in-cheek mocked a bit. But, the one element to all of that that's actually, regardless of what components you've used, the actual effective element of any of these practices is, again, presence in session, increased awareness, directing, self-directing, intention, and so forth. That's what all these other methods and avenues and various, self-help, motivational stuff is, eventually trying to kind of, fishtail people around to. But in most cases, prior to systemology, in most cases, they just haven't really been very effective. I've explored many of these self-help, self-motivational, behavioral modification psychology, all kinds of avenues and stuff, all trying to find if there's anything out there, that was useful, that was actually going to, get people along the pathway. So we've kind of more isolated that here. So when we do this, we repeat this over and over a few times. In its addition to being used as a preliminary and a formal session, typically a process such as this is run in order for a seeker to actually learn something, or to come to a new realization. And this is really always our intention. We're talking about, the realizations, those endpoints, and, to realize sometimes just in this case, when we're doing this objective stuff, it really can boil down to something as simple as having new realization, or a new level of realization over the command that, an individual is directly self-determining over the body and the functions of the mind and so forth. So the concepts that we're going for, the endpoints, don't always necessarily glean, new information such as like data you would codify or isolate for a book or a subject. It can simply be, hey, rather than being instructed it and told it, and oh, you are not your body and so forth. We've been down those routes, and we've heard those speeches and those lectures, and we've seen those books, hit the bestseller list for a period of time, almost as a trend or a fad, and then just die out with people usually not getting much benefit from that. So systematically, we have to really work at these various steps, the actual critical steps in which to elevate consciousness, elevate our awareness, as we say in systemology. So overrun, easily takes place in processing if, for example, the endpoint is reached during the process and not acknowledged, and the process is not stopped at that point. In traditional piloting, it's up to an experienced practitioner to recognize these points. But when flying solo, a seeker should get familiar with this phenomenon ahead of time and know how to fix it. So the basic pattern observed of overrun is a process begins rough, and then suddenly it smooths out, seems easy and fun, which for like an objective process such as those we've been talking about, it would that would basically be your release point or end point on that. And then if you continue doing it, it kind of starts to feel tough again. And in this case, what the overrun will say, for piloting purposes, using flight semantics and whatnot, we'll generally say that a pilot has flown past or bypassed the appropriate landing point for that process where the seeker was trying to go, the destination. So the most basic solution to overrunning a process is it's simply to spot the exact moment when you were feeling good about it, and did reach that endpoint. And then it starts to, by that acknowledgement, see the key was to actually acknowledge, oh, okay, I reached the endpoint on the process, and then, okay, we're ending the process. If you go past that, the solution is basically to spot that point and basically return to that point essentially, as far as, as with your attention, that, oh, actually, that was the point there, and that, and the reason we'd say to practice with this is you'll get kind of a better sense of this stuff as you go along. All I can really do is basically just instruct it the basic concepts behind this. And so, this is where the systemology, as we have been presenting it, prior to like the Pathway to Ascension volume for New Standard Systemology, a lot of it's been theoretical, or a lot of it's been exercises that were experimented with, dual, co-piloting. And so this is kind of a different way for us to approach it, try and get more individuals able to access the information, apply it directly. So basically you would just go back and spot that exact, the moment you were feeling good and did reach the end point. And, we use the word spot throughout the course. So let's see, where's the exact, so by spot, we mean definitively notice or perceive something distinctively. And this isn't not necessarily just visually or with the eyes. To spot something in our past, or to spot a piece of information or so forth that we're pulling up for ourselves, it doesn't necessarily have to have any visual cues or associations with it. If you can bring to mind the basic instance when you were feeling good about, in this case, the object, when you're working with the objects and such, then it would start to seem that way again, because you would have acknowledged that was the point they were trying to reach. You didn't just dismiss it, move past. The reason we spend so much time on this is because these, the processing themselves, the processes, the exercises are not incredibly complicated. But the execution of them, the application of them within a systematic processing session must be handled systematically if you're expecting this work to deliver the results. I can't put guarantees behind this, but if you use it properly, most of the times when individuals are running into problems or it's not working for them, there's a key reason why this isn't working. And so this is these two states here, what our target is, our destination, and versus not hitting it or overshooting it. This is pretty critical to operating systematic processing sessions to actually get effective gains out of them, to make it not just seem like an exercise of moving stuff, because anything could be like that. Anything that's not treated, we kind of dismissively speak of the old traditions and ceremonial applications of various things, religious or spiritual or otherwise, but they're really just motions, they're really just words, they're really just giving lip service when they aren't being treated as a point of realization, for what they are. If you don't take them seriously, you're not going to get anything from them. Unfortunately, we found that taking them seriously just by themselves doesn't necessarily guarantee anything either. So we've isolated those elements again. So, and then underrunning, that's basically, withdrawing or pulling back or ending the process for whatever reason prior to the end point. So, re-stimulating something. The examples we've been giving with the objective processes, they don't usually have a lot of mental strain or emotional turbulence attached to them directly, but and that's why we say to select a neutral object, because if it were an object that we didn't particularly like, then there'd be already a kind of an inclination about that. And what we're trying to do is resume full control, command self-determined control over our ability to direct intentions, be able to make ourselves do something, and not whether we like it or not, as in it proposes a threat to us or something. The idea is that so much of our physical material existence and universe has been, associated or programmed or conditioned on an individual to be a threat, to be a danger, that the extent to which an individual will reach, the extent to which they will move, the extent to which they're willing to imagine or actually create, diminishes bit by bit as we descend and as we continue our descent. And so that's why we're taking corrective measures here, actually acknowledging what has been taking place. This isn't just new. And as far as I could tell, this probably is not specific to just the human condition. This is something that involves an element of ourselves, our actual spiritual beingness that we have carried through, countless existences, through many different universes that are composed of many different, levels of solidity or rules to define them. So what we're trying to do is practice stuff that has in the past, or through the process of losing the command over the mind system, been set on automatic, and therefore resume that control and that command knowingly. The solution, of course, for underrun is to pick up the point from where you left it and, of course, continue the process. So we use touch and let go as a training example at the Mardukite Academy, but it is also a very real process. The standard version, as in essence, it's actually relayed. If you look through what are the material thus far, the formal session script, and so forth, look around, choose an object. Now choose a specific spot on the object. Touch and let go of it until you feel good about your conscious ability to do that, and then choose a different spot on the object and do the same. And do this on individual spots until the object seems more acceptable to you. And these are just the PCL of advancing the touch and let go procedure further. After having some practice with this, you can, like on many spots, using various different objects, you can then apply this technique in everyday life with the various things you find yourself using frequently. This is especially useful on things, for example, at work, at your job, and also on automobiles. Everyone should probably be required to do this on vehicles before, they're allowed to drive them as individuals. But we're talking about, actually handling things, actually directing attention, focusing attention, handling. This is actually a fairly new concept. We are so used to kind of half asleep, walking through life and just kind of bumping against things and intermingling with various energies and energetic masses that whatever they are, or whatever these forms are computed to be, have already been predefined. We've already got a whole data, file associated with it. We're doing very little on as a self-determined being, spiritual being with unlimited power. This is how a being with almost godlike or godlike, say it's not practically or essentially unlimited godlike abilities, creative abilities, was able to, through the descent of various universes and considerations and agreements, come to a point where it's just absent-mindedly, fixed to these genetic vehicles, these bodies, and operating them, and then of course, arguing at the same time that, well, I want to think for myself, or don't tell me what to do. People are, no one, those here and some that have been advancing farther, perhaps, in other systems too, may have reached higher levels of course, actualization and awareness in this lifetime. But and those of us that have, we know what we're talking about here. So, as a variation of this in processing, it's quite standard to have a seeker spotting spots on walls of the processing room and performing the same touch and let go cycles. This not only increases personal presence of awareness in present space-time, but also increases the vibrancy of the room. Using walls in this process enables directing awareness on spots that are not part of objects or particularly interesting. So, being able to shift from spots on an object, something that's very specific on something that can be identified, to shifting to just general spots on a wall that don't necessarily have another piece of energetic mass associated with them. And when we take this another step farther, like an advanced application of it, we can actually go as far as to say spots in space. So spotting spots in space definitively with awareness, a particular specific point, spot in space, that is not attached to necessarily an object or isn't a spot on a physical wall even, but simply is a spot in space. This ability to selectively and intentionally direct attention, again, this increase of awareness that we emphasize so much in this first lesson, this is what you're going to be building up and using to apply increased awareness, attention, and selective direction all the way along the pathway here. So this is nothing at this point. Now that we've boiled stuff down to the Pathway to Ascension volumes, and there's only 2 volumes, 1 and 2, anything that's superfluous has gone by the wayside. Even stuff that was interesting, that was useful for the development, has simply been retained in the research volumes, which are still accessible, but we've been able to really boil it down now. And in formal sessions, we've been talking a lot about objective processing because it's easy to work with, it's fun, it gets the body moving, and focusing attention, awareness, and present time before dealing with other kinds of processing. So in a formal session, objective processing, it's applied in between periods of more introspective or subjective processing in order to kind of maintain a seeker's orientation or presence of awareness in the present time, to keep that presence in session. Because a lot of the more intensive processes, the subjective processes, they're really going to have an individual focused and tearing things apart and working things out and all kinds of stuff on a systematic level. After doing that, reaching that breakthrough, you don't just go on and go, okay, let's tackle something else. You almost cement it or solidify that by taking a break from that introspective and then again looking out and identifying various things in the environment, bringing awareness back to a presence within the environment. We're not trying to just lose ourselves in a bunch of mental circuitry here, but we take that win after we've gone introspective and reach some new realization or improved awareness level, and then do some objective processing to kind of get that flow moving again. We've done a lot of inflowing or things within ours, worked on a lot of mental images that we have that are chained within us, and we let that go, and then we start looking out into our environment and our world. And assuming that you're just getting through one kind of intensive of an introspective or subjective process, before just ending the process, you would want to do some kind of objective presence in space-time processing and then end the session, assuming that particular period took enough to satisfy being an entire session. You want to end the session. So And then again, advanced applications. We were talking about how advanced applications and kind of preliminaries to some of the advanced spiritual ability training is actually a build upon all the stuff we do in the Pathway to Ascension, and then goes further. The advanced applications of this basic touch and let go technique is simply requires, again, seated, lying down, or whatever, comfortably, mentally reaching out with attention, or else extending or projecting one's awareness kind of like a beam of energy. So instead of actually setting the body to move and pick up objects or touch spots and so forth, you would seat yourself in the room mentally, and eventually we'll get into like what zoo vision is and so forth. But again, at this level, we don't really care how imaginative it is or how precise or anything like that, what impressions a person actually gets, from using, spiritual vision as opposed to the eyes. But you would, mentally reach and withdraw from, various objects, points, spots on the walls, and then eventually spots in space. So that, there's a mental exercise, as always an advanced version of an objective exercise where you're moving around and working with the body. So
the Joshua Free Imprint, JFI Publications, in conjunction with Mardukite Academy and the Systemology Society, present the single greatest breakthrough of the 21st century for all humanity, the perfection of a new standard systemology, a complete map for the way out from the bottom to the top, and your key to being an ascended master in this lifetime. Everything you need is contained in 3 progressive, self-guiding courses: the Fundamentals of Systemology Basic Course, the Pathway to Ascension Professional Course, and the Keys to the Kingdom Advanced Training Course. And each should be studied and applied in their intended sequence and order as displayed in this video. All 3 courses combined are available as 5 standard hardcover volumes, but also as 33 installments, since each single course lesson is also available individually as a pocket-sized manual. The Fundamentals of Systemology Basic Course includes Being More Than Human, Realities in Agreement, Windows to Experience, Ancient Systemology, A History of Systemology, and Systemology Processing. The Pathway to Ascension Professional Course, including processing levels 0 through 6, includes in Volume 1, Increasing Awareness, Thought and Emotion, Clear Communication, Handling Humanity, Free Your Spirit, Escaping Spirit Traps, Eliminating Barriers, and Conquest of Illusion. The Pathway to Ascension Volume 2 includes Confronting the Past, Lifting the Veils, Spiritual Implants, Games and Universes, Spiritual Energy, Spiritual Machinery, The Arcs of Infinity, and Alpha Thought. The Keys to the Kingdom AT Advanced Training Course for Processing Level 7 in Volume 1 includes The Secret of Universes, Games, Goals, and Purposes, The Jewel of Knowledge, Implanted Universes, and the Supplementals Systemology Biofeedback and Systemology Procedures. The Keys to the Kingdom AT Advanced Training Course for Processing Level 8 in Volume 2 includes Entities and Fragments, Spiritual Perception, Mastering Ascension, Advancing Systemology, and the AT Supplement Systemology Piloting. All titles are available from your favorite bookseller. Explore new standard systemology today, and may you never be the same.